Jack Torrance, Jack Daniels, and a spirited conspiracy. A humorous dive into The Shining and American whiskey lore. The film The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick, is widely considered a psychological horror masterpiece. But as any self-respecting armchair philosopher or unhinged conspiracy theorist knows, its true brilliance lies not in the haunting Overlook Hotel, but in a single scene, Jack Torrance's tête-à-tête with Lloyd, the hotel bartender. The scene doesn't just drip with tension, it's soaked in Jack Daniels whiskey, both literally and metaphorically. One might wonder, why does Jack Torrance, a man unraveling faster than a cheap sweater in a spin cycle, reach for a drink whose name contains both his own and his son Danny's? And more importantly, why does Lloyd have the audacity to call Jack Daniels bourbon? The answers lie somewhere between a Tennessee distillery, the tangled history of American whiskey, and Kubrick's penchant for maddening ambiguity. A whiskey by any other name. First, let's tackle the elephant, or the whiskey barrel, in the room. Why isn't Jack Daniels considered bourbon? By definition, bourbon must adhere to a strict set of guidelines, like a picky eater at Thanksgiving. Among them, the spirit must be distilled in the United States, contain at least 51% corn, and aged in charred oak barrels. But here's the kicker. It doesn't have to be made in Bourbon County, Kentucky. That's a common misconception. Much like believing Jack Torrance was just looking for a little peace and quiet when he took that job at the Overlook. The real reason Jack Daniels is disqualified from the Bourbon Club is its use of the Lincoln County process, a charcoal filtration method that gives it its smooth, smoky character. This makes it a Tennessee whiskey, a proud but separate lineage. Lloyd, however, calls Jack Daniels bourbon anyway. Perhaps he's ignorant of whiskey taxonomy, but that seems unlikely for a supernatural bartender in a high-class establishment. It's more plausible that Lloyd knows exactly what he's doing. He's manipulating Jack with the sinister charm of a man who knows his audience. Jack, the writer-turned-caretaker, isn't the kind of guy who's parsing whiskey semantics. If it looks like bourbon, tastes like bourbon, and numbs your existential despair like bourbon, it's bourbon enough for him. Lloyd, ever the enabler, probably figures Jack won't care about the finer points of whiskey law when he's contemplating murder. The name game, Jack and Danny and Jack Daniels. But let's get to the heart of the matter. Why Jack Daniels? There's something undeniably poetic about Jack Torrance drinking a whiskey that bears his name and his son's. Jack, the doomed antihero, embodies a fractured identity. One part loving father, one part psychotic axe-wielding lunatic. This duality mirrors the tension between the Jack and Danny within the whiskey's moniker. Is it a coincidence? Hardly. The Overlook Hotel's malevolent spirit feeds on Jack's inner conflict. Much like how Lloyd feeds Jack that first drink. The whiskey itself becomes a darkly symbolic bridge between Jack's tormented psyche and Danny's innocent soul, tying their fates together with every sip. In a film as meticulously constructed as The Shining, nothing is accidental. Kubrick was a notorious perfectionist, once filming 127 takes of a single scene to capture the exact nuance he wanted. It's entirely plausible that the choice of Jack Daniels wasn't random, but a subtle nod to the names that tie the Torrance family together, and eventually tear them apart. Or perhaps Kubrick just liked the bottle's distinctive black and white label. Who can say? A brief and totally necessary history of American whiskey. To fully appreciate the absurdity of Lloyd's bourbon faux pas, it helps to understand the history of American whiskey. Bourbon originated in Kentucky, where settlers discovered that the state's limestone-rich water and fertile soil were perfect for growing corn and making booze. Early distillers were likely trying to turn a profit from surplus grain, but what they accidentally created was a distinctly American spirit. Meanwhile, Jack Daniels whiskey emerged in Tennessee, where Jasper Newton Jack Daniel founded his distillery in the 1860s. Known for its signature mellow flavor, Jack Daniels became a global icon, with its name adorning everything from shot glasses to biker jackets. The brand's refusal to call itself bourbon is a point of pride, much like Jack Torrance's refusal to admit he's going insane, right up until the moment he starts swinging that axe. Lloyd's motives, malice, or misinformation? Now, back to Lloyd. Why does he insist on calling Jack Daniels bourbon? Perhaps it's a deliberate act of psychological warfare. By mislabeling the whiskey, Lloyd subtly undermines Jack's trust in his own perceptions, sowing seeds of doubt and confusion. If a bartender can lie about something as trivial as whiskey, what else might be a lie? Is Jack really in a hotel? Is his family even real? Is he trapped in a labyrinth of whiskey-induced hallucinations? Answer: probably yes to all of the above. Alternatively, Lloyd might simply be catering to Jack's ignorance. As a man spiraling into madness, Jack probably isn't in the mood for a lecture on whiskey classifications. By calling it bourbon, Lloyd provides a comforting shorthand, much like when you let your grandmother call every video game a Nintendo because it's easier than explaining the difference. Final thoughts: a toast to madness. Ultimately, the choice of Jack Daniel's in The Shining isn't just about the whiskey. It's about the story it tells. It's about Jack Torrance's descent into chaos, his fracturing relationship with his son, and the sinister forces that conspire to turn a quiet winter caretaking gig into a blood-soaked nightmare. It's about how whiskey, like the Overlook Hotel, is both comforting and dangerous, both familiar and otherworldly. And it's about the sly humor of a bartender who calls Tennessee whiskey bourbon just to mess with you. So the next time you watch The Shining, pour yourself a glass of Jack Daniel's or bourbon if you're feeling defiant, and raise a toast to Kubrick, Lloyd, and the entire Torrance family. Just don't forget to lock the bathroom door. After all, you never know when someone might come calling with an axe. Cheers!